Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nita Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nita Gaura Hari Bol. Nita Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nita Gaura Hari Bol. Jayo Panchatattva, Jayo Panchatattva, Jayo Panchatattva, Jayo Panchatattva. Jayo Panchatattva, 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 Jai Panchatattva. Jayo Gauranitai, 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 Jayo Gauranitai. Jayo Gauranitai, 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 Jayo Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare enkrat. Enkrat. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krišna. Hare Krišna, dragi gostje, dragi bakte, lepo pozdravljeni na nedeljskem festivalu. Najlepša hvala Jagat Prabhuju za lepe bhajane. Program na nedeljskem festivalu kot običajen. Najprej so bili bhajani oziroma meditativna glasba, sledi predavanje. Po predavanju bo spet ples in petje pred božanstvi in nato prasadam. In po prasadamu še program plus. Tako da dobrodošli, da ste z nami do konca. Danes vam bom predstavila predavatelja. On prihaja iz Amerike. Kako se je znašel v Sloveniji? Je zato, ker je poročen z našo baktino Lalita Sundari. Drugače pa je v bhakti-jogi že 10 let. Začel je prakticirati pred približno 10 leti. Kar je zanimivo je, da ima doktorat iz teologije iz Cambridgea, na univerzi v Virginiji pa predava moderni hinduizem in Bhagavad-gito. Piše knjige za Bhaktivedanta Institute in BBT. Tako. Današnje predavanje pa bo zagotovo navdihujoče. Please, njegovo ime pa je Adi Purusha Das. Hare Krišna.
It's a pleasure to be with you all today.
Kdor potrebuje prevod iz angleščine v slovenščino, se lahko zglasi tamle pri oknu, so slušalke. Sposodite si jih in potem po predavanju prosim vrnite.
So before I speak, I'll sing a song called Jai Radha Madhava, and those of you who know it can sing along. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunati Ravanachari Yamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. So, today the topic that I'll speak about is called, Why Does a Loving God Allow So Much Evil? When I first sent the title for this, I accidentally titled it, Why Does Loving Involve So Much Evil? Why does loving involve so much suffering? That's a topic for a different day. So the topic of why a loving God allows so much suffering is one that has been extensively debated throughout history. Many religious traditions, many thinkers throughout history have wrestled with this problem. And specifically, there's the problem of evil. There's what's known as the problem of evil. Has anyone heard of the problem of evil? Okay, so the problem is something like this. Generally, religious people say that God is supposed to be all-loving, God is also supposed to be all-knowing, and God is supposed to be all-powerful. But then there's a problem that arises, because if God is all-knowing, then God would know how to prevent the suffering that we witness in the world. If God is all-powerful, he would have the ability to prevent all the suffering that we witness in the world. And if God is all-loving, then God would want to prevent all the suffering that we witness. And yet, despite this, there's still suffering in this world. Quite often there's a lot of suffering in this world. Sometimes the suffering is even called evil. And so this is kind of a challenge. It's kind of like, God should prevent all this suffering that's going on, but he doesn't. So this is a challenge, and it's sort of a challenge to explain why all this suffering exists in this world. And so there's also the question of why this is important. And this problem is important for many reasons, even if one is not necessarily so philosophically inclined. One reason it's important is because this is the main atheist objection. This is the sort of main reason that atheists will often give for why they don't believe in a God, or why they say that God does not exist. And so many of us, maybe most of us, maybe even all of us, believe that there's some type of higher power, believe in some God. And so it's important to have a response to this question to sort of meet this objection that atheists will often raise. It's also important for us because we want to be rational, sensible people. Does anyone want to not be a rational, sensible person here? Okay. So most people want to be rational and have, reasonable and sensible beliefs. And having a reasonable belief involves having a belief that sort of fits with our experience of the world. And so if someone believes in God, but they don't have a way to explain all the evil that exists and all the suffering that exists, it's sort of like, it seems like an irrational belief. You're sort of believing something that contradicts our experience of the world. So if you want to be sensible and kind of reasonable, it's good to have an explanation for why these things happen. Also, it's helpful for us as spiritual practitioners to understand why there's suffering and what role it plays in God's plan, what role it serves, if it can be useful for us, or if there's a way to learn from it. And so that's important for us from a personal perspective as well. And so different religious traditions will have different responses to this problem of evil. And the tradition that we're part of here is, it's the Hare Krišna movement, but it's actually part of an ancient Indian religious tradition. It was 500 years ago. There was, you can say, there's Chaitanya. He came and he spread the teachings of this tradition, but even before him, this tradition goes very far back into the past. And so the tradition, the Hare Krišna movement, has a lot of things to say about who we are, why we're here, why there's suffering in the world, who God is, what the purpose of life is. And a lot of that is relevant for addressing this problem. So a brief overview of the Hare Krišna tradition is this. First of all, there's us. We're individual spiritual souls, you can say. And our nature is actually one of bliss. We might not always be happy right now, but in our sort of truest, our true nature is to always be happy. And this happiness comes because we have a relationship with God, who we consider to be Krishna. And Krishna is not a vengeful God that wants to punish us. Krishna is a very loving God, and he wants to have a relationship with us. And if we reflect on what makes us happy in this world, it's relationships. We like to have relationships with our partners, with our friends, with our children, with our parents. These loving relationships give us a lot of pleasure. And so the greatest pleasure we can experience is by having a loving relationship with the greatest person, who is Krishna. And actually, in our relationships, we see that when we're in a relationship with a really great and amazing person, that relationship is very satisfying to us. And so because God is the greatest person, we get a lot of pleasure and happiness by being in a relationship with Him. And so when we're with Krishna, we can experience a lot of happiness, and Krishna has his own world, his own spiritual world, we can say. And when we're completely pure, then we can go back to Krishna and enjoy a life of eternal bliss with Him. But right now we're in this world, and while we're in this world, sort of those who are on the spiritual path are trying to improve ourselves, work on our faults, and try to become pure so that we can go back to Krishna and enjoy this life of happiness with Him. And so that's one component, that there's God, and He's our relationship with God brings us a lot of happiness, and this is the highest happiness that we can experience. But in order to have a loving relationship with God, there's something that we need. And that something is free will. And free will means that we have the freedom to choose a relationship with God. God does not want to have a relationship with, robots that He sort of makes love Him. God does not want us to, sort of be controlled by Him. God wants us to love Him freely. And this free will that we have makes our relationship with God meaningful, and it also makes other things that we do meaningful. Would anyone here not want to have free will? Okay, so, we can all agree that free will is this valuable thing. It adds value to our life, and it makes our relationship with God very meaningful. At the same time, with free will, on the one hand, it allows our choices and actions to be meaningful, but on the other hand, it also means that we can misuse our free will. And I'm sure many of us have experiences of misusing our free will. I know I certainly have my experiences. And so this free will is meaningful, but then at the same time, we can also misuse it. And when we misuse our free will, we act in ways that are counterproductive to us. We act in wrong ways. And by acting in these ways, it brings suffering for ourselves and oftentimes others as well. And so free will is another reason why there's evil or suffering in this world. But then at this point, you might also say, God could give us free will, but then also make it so that this world is a nicer place that doesn't involve so much suffering. God could give us free will, but then make it so that there's no pain or that there's no disease. So even if we have free will, there's still this question of why there's still so much suffering in the world, why our actions have to bring suffering in the first place. And so that's where the idea of karma comes into the picture. Has anyone heard of karma before? Yeah. What does karma mean? Anyone? Action, reaction. That's good. Yeah. And so karma, sometimes in America, people have this understanding of karma. They say, what goes around comes around. Do people say that here also? Oh, no. Okay. The basic idea is that with karma, actions have consequences. And so if someone acts in a good way, then they get a good karmic reaction that happens to them. If someone acts in a bad way or a mean way, then they'll have something bad happen to them. And there's many reasons that karma is there. Karma is not meant to punish us. It's actually meant for our benefit. One reason why karma is there to benefit us is that when we have these negative or bad karmic reactions, we can actually learn certain lessons from them. For example, these karmic reactions might make us more sensitive to others, might make us be more aware of how our actions harm others. And so, for example, if someone is a thief and they steal, maybe they steal, $100 from someone's purse or something like that, then they might get a karmic reaction, and that karmic reaction might be that they get something stolen from them. And the idea is that when this thief has something stolen from them, they get an idea of how their actions harm and affect others. If the thief gets something stolen, they might think, oh, this is such a terrible thing that happened. I don't like the way that this makes me feel. And they might think, okay, this is how stealing feels. I don't want to cause this to other people. That's one reason why karma can purify us and help us learn lessons. Another way is that sometimes suffering can help us seek out higher goals in life. In my own experience and the experience of probably many people here, sometimes we live our life, we go out, chasing what society tells us to chase. We want maybe cars or a big house or material things like that. But if one has suffered a lot, they can sometimes realize that these things don't bring the happiness that we're looking for, and they might seek out something higher. Maybe they might seek out God or try to understand this world. And so suffering can be beneficial in that way as well. Karma is also, it makes it so that there's justice in the world. Nowadays there's a lot of focus on justice and justice for different types of individuals, social justice, they say. That's becoming a big thing in America. I'm sure it's becoming big here in Slovenia. But the idea is that we want fairness and we want justice in the world. And karma also allows there to be justice in the world. And the reason for that is because of karma, no one sort of suffers randomly. People, if they act in good ways, they'll get good things happen to them. If they act in bad ways, then bad things will happen to them. And so there's this sense in which people kind of get what they deserve, and so there's a sense of justice there. And so far there's this idea of free will, and there's this idea of karma. And together they can make sense of why there's suffering in the world. Basically, people have their free will, and when they misuse that free will, they act in wrong ways, and then there's karmic reactions that come as a result of that, and that can often cause suffering. But at the same time, that suffering is beneficial because these individuals can learn lessons that ultimately bring them closer to Krishna, and that's their ultimate true happiness. At the same time, there's also various objections that people raise to karma. Some people say it doesn't make sense. And so one of the things that people often say about karma is something like this. According to, basically people say that we often suffer or experience consequences for things that we don't remember doing in previous lives. One thing I should mention is that the Hare Krishna tradition also teaches that there's the idea of reincarnation. And so this is not our first life in this world. We had many lives before this, and we may continue to have lives after this. And so if this is the case, then we might suffer in this life for something that we did in a previous life. But then there's a problem because we're suffering even though we don't remember why we're suffering, because what we did is something in a previous life that we don't remember. And so someone might say that karma is sort of unfair because people suffer for things that they don't even remember doing. That's sort of one objection to karma. And so there's different responses to this type of objection. One is that if we remembered all our previous lives, it would just be too overwhelming for us. We would have so many memories and we couldn't even really function properly in the world. And even if we just remembered certain things, or even if we just remembered certain bad actions that we did, that would still be very overwhelming because we might experience the guilt of all our previous wrong actions, and that would make it very hard for us to make any type of growth or progress. It would be very sort of difficult for us. Also, at the same time, even if we can't remember something that we did in a previous life, we can still learn from our experiences. And sometimes the experience of suffering in itself can teach us lessons. So if someone stole something in a previous life, and they have something stolen from them in this life, even if they don't remember stealing something in a previous life, still that experience of having something stolen from them in this life could teach them to be more sensitive and give them a sense of how stealing affects others. And so, this idea that karma doesn't make sense because we can't remember our previous actions is not really such a, good objection to the idea of karma. Another thing people say about karma is that it sort of negates our free will or undermines our free will or makes it so that we don't have any free will. Some people say that if there's karma, then we're basically destined to experience things, and then we don't really have the freedom to really change our destiny or shape how our life experiences will be. And this is also not a good objection, and one analogy that helps explain why karma can exist with free will is the poker hand analogy. So everyone familiar with the game of poker? Okay, so in the game of poker, you're given some cards, and you don't get to choose what your cards are. And some cards are better than others. So if you have 2 aces, that's usually better than a 2 and a 3. And so what people say about karma is that karma might determine the hands that you're given. Some people are given better hands, some people are given worse hands. But at the same time, karma doesn't decide how you play those cards. So sometimes in a game of poker, someone can have bad cards but still win because they played very well. So kind of in a similar way, karma might decide what hands were dealt, but we still have the freedom to respond to that. So if someone is born in circumstances and they had a lot of difficulties in life, they still have the freedom to respond to those difficulties and decide their own future. Also, there's a sense in which the hands that were dealt are in some sense in our control because they are reactions to our previous free choices that we made before. So even in that sense, nothing is sort of random or forced upon us because of karma. Things that happen to us are because of our previous choices. And in one sense, that actually gives us more freedom because it means we're in charge of our life. Nothing will happen to us randomly, but we get to choose our future. So so we actually get more free will because of karma. One of the biggest issues with karma, though, is the idea of blaming the victim. What this means is that if someone is suffering because of their karma, some people might say, oh, they deserve to suffer for that because it's their karma to suffer. They did something. And that can be a very big problem because, if you've ever suffered something and someone said, oh, you deserve to suffer, it's your karma, you'll probably know that it feels very bad, and it's not a good response to someone. And it's not a good attitude to have in general, because, it's not, we're trying to be compassionate and empathic, and blaming others does not really going to help us achieve that goal. But there's no reason that karma should make us blame others for their suffering. One example is that doctors will treat patients, and you might have a doctor that treats lung cancer, for example. The doctor who treats lung cancer might get a patient who has lung cancer and who smokes, let's say, smokes 2 packs of cigarettes a day. The doctor may know that this person caused their suffering and they caused their lung cancer by their smoking. At the same time, the doctor doesn't say, oh, this lung cancer is your fault, you deserve this because you smoked all these cigarettes. The doctor would, instead say, okay, you have this lung cancer, I'm going to give you treatment so that you can get better. So in a similar way, our response to people who suffer should not be, oh, you're suffering because of your karma, you deserve to suffer. Rather, our response should be, oh, how can I help you? And, our response should be one of empathy. There's also another question, and that's, why does God allow this system of karma in the first place? God could just avoid all this suffering altogether if he just didn't have this idea of karma. And as devotees of Krishna or devotees of God, this question is also of importance to us. And basically, God can destroy our karma. God can make it so that we don't have to experience all these things. And they say that if one is sincere about their relationship with God, God will actually destroy one's karma. God is willing to destroy someone's karma, but when someone has to want it, God doesn't sort of randomly destroy some people's karma but not others. He destroys the karma of those who approach God with the intention of having a relationship. And so for devotees of God, they approach God with this intention of wanting a relationship, and God, Krishna, reciprocates, and he destroys the devotee's karma. At the same time, sometimes Krishna may arrange moments of suffering for his devotees because those instances of suffering can teach devotees lessons and enable them to learn certain things. In the srimad-bhagavatam, one of our holy texts, Krishna describes that sometimes he might take things away from a devotee, and that may seem cruel initially, but the idea is that if someone has things taken from them, then often it can make them more devoted to God. It can make them call out to God intensely. It can make them seek out other it can make them seek out other spiritualists, and ultimately it can benefit them, even if it's difficult for the time being. And many devotees might have this experience. They might go through life, and then somehow maybe they get sick, and it sort of it messes with their career or something, or maybe they have people leave them, or maybe they lose things, or maybe they lose money, or maybe something really bad happens to them. And as a result of it, devotees will seek out some type of spiritual company and seek out a spiritual life. So the kind of idea is that Krishna is kind and loving, and he might take things away from us to allow our love for him to grow and deepen. So far, I've approached things from a more philosophical perspective. There's this problem of evil is kind of a philosophical question. There's philosophers and theologians that debate it. And it's, in one sense, important to have a philosophical understanding of suffering so that we can have our faith in Krishna, and so that we don't get worried that there's all this suffering in the world and God is allowing it. At the same time, there's also an emotional side of suffering that's present for us as devotees. Sometimes we might have this theoretical understanding of why Krishna allows suffering in our lives. We might be able to accept, okay, this is because of my karma, or okay, this is because Krishna is trying to teach me a lesson. It's very easy to have that theoretical understanding of suffering. What's difficult, however, is to really deal with that suffering emotionally. Oftentimes, even if you know why something is happening, it can still be very hard, and it can still be difficult to process. So there's some other points that I thought are important to mention with regards to how we receive the suffering in our lives, because it's not always easy to really accept that Krishna is doing things for our benefit sometimes. One thing is that it's okay to struggle with our suffering and to feel sad or angry and so on. Sometimes we might have this mood that, oh, Krishna is causing this suffering, or I'm supposed to learn something from this, and we maybe turn on our philosophical hats and just kind of approach the situation philosophically and not really deal with that suffering with our emotions. But oftentimes, it's okay to feel sad or angry if things happen to us, and it's important to be able to process those emotions and not just sort of push them down and try to look at everything philosophically. It's also helpful to talk to others who are empathic or compassionate when one is suffering. If someone is going to tell you that, oh, you're suffering because of your karma, or even, oh, you're suffering, this is good, you'll learn all these lessons from it, that's not always the response that one wants to hear. Oftentimes you can feel very bad because you don't feel heard or understood, or you don't feel that someone is really taking your situation seriously. And so it's helpful to talk to someone compassionate who can listen when you're going through some suffering, and that can help even if you have a theoretical understanding of why you might be suffering something. It's also important to work on our issues, which means processing our emotions, maybe processing the grief that we've gone through, or maybe processing the trauma that we've gone through in life. And it's important to sort of work on that and process that in a healthy, mature way. And by doing that, we can be genuinely thankful to Krishna for whatever arrangements he's made in our life. Otherwise, Krishna may arrange something for us. We might sort of say, okay, yes, Krishna's doing this, I'm kind of unhappy, I'm sad, but I'm supposed to accept this because I'm supposed to accept that Krishna does everything that's good. Sometimes it's easy to have that mindset theoretically or philosophically, but to really get a genuine sense of thankfulness and gratitude to Krishna for arranging certain things, it's helpful to actually process the negative emotions that one might feel, because that's a necessary part of coming to accept and make sense of the suffering that we might experience. Another thing is spiritual life is a long-term process. It's okay if we need time to accept certain things. It's okay if something happens to us, it sort of, it causes a lot of distress in our lives, it makes us confused, and it's okay to have that confusion, have that distress, because it's a long-term process and sometimes we need time to be able to accept these things. And finally, sometimes we can't see the benefits of what we experience now. I'm sure maybe many of you have had this experience. Something bad might happen to us initially, but then later in life we kind of realize, oh, this thing that I thought was bad initially has actually been very good for me. It's enabled me to have this opportunity now. Like for example, I was applying to different universities when I was younger. I got rejected from many of them, and initially I thought that was a bad thing. But as a result, I ended up going to a university that had devotees. I was able to join and find spiritual life and find a much more fulfilling life. So for me, even though there was this, even though it seemed negative that I was getting these rejections, still it turned out to be the best thing for me in now that I look on it, now that I look back on it. So oftentimes things happen to us in our lives, and it seems kind of bad at the time, but later in life we can appreciate why those things happened. And when this happens to us, and when we come to have these realizations, then we can develop our faith in Krishna. And with that faith, when something bad happens or there's some suffering in our lives, then we can have the faith that, okay, things were bad in the past, but they came to be beneficial later on. So this might be one of those cases that it's bad now, but I'm sure Krishna has a plan, and ultimately things will work out in the end, and things will just, things will work out. Things will work out. And so I talked about the problem of evil. It's raised as a philosophical objection to belief in God. And the Hare Krishna tradition has many responses to it and ways to make sense of this suffering in our lives. And one of the takeaways for us is that Krishna or God is loving and kind, and the sufferings and difficulties that we experience are difficult, but they ultimately are meant to teach us lessons, meant to bring us closer to Krishna and bring us closer to our true happiness, which is a loving relationship with Krishna. And there's also some ways that we can come to appreciate or understand the sufferings in our lives. And one thing is important for us is to be patient and to maybe process our suffering in a healthy way so that we can be genuinely thankful for it. So at this point, I can take some questions from the audience if there are some.
Hare Krishna. Can you tell me, can the Abrahamic religion actually answer this question on some meaningful way?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I've looked at the different responses they have. One response that they have is that suffering is a mystery. We don't know why it's happening. We just have to accept that that's kind of how it is. I don't find that personally very satisfying, because it's just sort of, I want to know why these things are happening. I don't like to sort of, it's weird to have all these things happen and then not have a response for it. that's also a problem because many people struggle with this problem. They lose their faith because of this existence of suffering. And without some type of response, it's sort of, there's a problem of why God doesn't just tell us why the suffering is happening so that we can make sense of it. So I think the Abrahamic religions struggle because they often say that. It's also a problem because there's no idea of reincarnation in the Abrahamic religions generally. And reincarnation, I think, makes better sense of suffering because if you suffer something in this life, it might be very, very painful. It might even be hard to see how that suffering is beneficial overall. But with reincarnation, that suffering is teaching you lessons, and you'll keep those lessons in the next lives that you have. And in each of those following lives, you'll sort of benefit from that suffering because you've learned lessons. And so the suffering that we experience, the benefits can go on from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. And so I think it's easier to make sense of certain cases of suffering in our view, whereas if you just have one life, then you might suffer a lot, and in the end you don't really benefit from it because you benefit very little in this life, and you don't benefit any in any of your future lives. So I think it's problematic in other traditions. Also, there's no karma in other traditions, and so then suffering is just kind of random. Some people suffer a lot for no reason. Some people have nice lives for no reason, and it just seems kind of unfair and unjust unless there's some deeper thing like karma. So the Eastern Indian religious traditions, like Hare Krishna tradition, have a very strong response, I would say.
Okay, thank you for your class. Just I will relate to this question and answer. Also, it could be answered in a way that different traditions also have a different level of understanding of evil. So it could be mystical, but it could be also doctrinal. So different answers could be given. And I just want to ask you in regard of our tradition. So when you mentioned evil, and you said that we have different answers to it, whether that means that evil is something pluralistic, or like it could be related to karma, to suffering, to different things. And when someone asks you what's actually evil, how would you answer to that? And whether evil have to be necessarily violent, or evil could be non-violent.
Yeah, so generally it's called the problem of evil, but I think most people agree that what we mean by evil is really a type of suffering. And so I think any type of suffering you could maybe consider a type of evil, or maybe you might not like the term evil, you might just say suffering. And even if it's just suffering, that's still kind of a problem because God would want to avoid allowing suffering. But as for whether evil or suffering has to be violent, I think there's cases where there's really bad things that happen to us that don't necessarily involve violence. Maybe we lose a loved one, or people with depression often experience a lot of suffering in their lives, and there's not necessarily always violence associated with that. So and sometimes people can experience a lot of pain but not necessarily suffer. Some people just have a lot of ability to tolerate things. So I kind of see evil as kind of suffering, and there's many ways that we might suffer in this world, and not all of them involve violence.
Okay, so you connecting evil with suffering, mostly.
Yeah.
So when someone asks you what is evil in Vaishnava tradition, then you can say the substitute is suffering, or you can extend that definition somehow.
Yeah, I would say suffering, and in one sense, our response would say that in one sense there is no evil, because everything that is seemingly bad is actually, in one sense, good in some way that we might not perceive. Like even the things that are bad are good because they're leading us to Krishna, or bringing us closer to Krishna in some way. So there's people that act in very unkind or mean ways. There's suffering in the world, but I think in the Vaishnava theology, in one sense, everything that happens is good in one sense. It's part of Krishna's plan. It's ultimately for the greater good. So I think that maybe suffering is better because evil kind of implies that there's this sort of bad thing, but in actuality, even the things that seem bad are good in one sense.
Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the lectures. I'd like to ask, I'm wondering, I was working with people with disabilities, so how can one person that is born with a disability act with karma or improve karma in his life when he has a mental and body disability? How can we help them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's different responses. One is that there are certain spiritual practices that one can do that benefit people who might not be able to really fully appreciate them. So there's the chanting of God's holy names, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. And even if people hear that, even if they don't understand it, they make a certain amount of benefit. Also, there's the idea that in this life they might be sort of burning off certain karma, and there's certain bodies that one can have where one is actually not making new karma. They're just sort of working off the karma they had, and so animals generally fall into this category, but in some cases, people with impairments, maybe they might be able to make some amount of progress or make some karma, but they might also be burning off some karma, and in that way they're kind of making advancement in one sense. There's a sense in which, there's also desire, and if we ourselves are kind and loving, people, even if they don't have even if their brain has some issues, if they just appreciate us, if they kind of say, oh, I like to be around this person, I like this person, that desire that they have, that they're developing, can also be purifying for them and help elevate them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. What about the people who, after they have experienced suffering, they turn away from God? And even, like in ISKCON, like Prabhupada said that children of devotees are Vaikuntha children, but they also experienced a lot of suffering. One would suppose that they have good karma, but then...
Yeah, so there's a couple of points you raised. One point worth mentioning is that in some cases it's Krishna directly. Maybe he's causing some instances of suffering based on karma, but it's kind of... even someone with good karma can still go through a lot of suffering because it's somehow part of Krishna's plan for them. But with regards to the first question, sometimes suffering might not produce an immediate benefit, and that's often the case. But we have this saying in English, the straw that broke the camel's back. There's this idea that sometimes we might go through something, we might not change. We might go through something else, we might not change. But if we go through enough suffering, it might just sort of change something in us. We might kind of decide, okay, like I need to do something different in my life. Like in relationships, maybe there'd be the case where, maybe not necessarily a romantic relationship, but between two friends, one friend might tolerate something, and then as time goes on, something happens and he decides enough is enough, and he sort of changes and decides to leave that relationship. So in the case of suffering, it may not necessarily benefit someone immediately. It might not even benefit them in this life. They might kind of struggle to process that. But there's the idea that suffering leaves certain impressions on the mind, and these impressions stay from one life to the next life. And someone might learn certain lessons from their suffering. They might have these impressions, and it might affect them, but then as time goes on, maybe future lives, they get more impressions, other things happen to them. There might be some change in some future life that they're not necessarily making now. So sometimes the effects of suffering are very hard to see in this life. It might take time, and it might be the case sometimes spiritual life is not linear. It's not that we just keep going, like a line, keep going up. Sometimes there's ups, and sometimes there's downs, and sometimes there's ups, and sometimes there's downs. And sometimes we have to almost go back a little bit or go through difficult periods of our times to really deepen and grow our faith. For example, it's common that someone might take to spiritual life and they don't really question things. They don't have doubts, and they just kind of accept things, and their faith is actually very superficial, or not, it's surface level in one sense. But if you go through periods of doubts, if you go through periods where you're questioning things, if you're going through periods where you're sort of exploring other options, sometimes it can actually benefit you in certain ways, because you see what life is like without that faith, or you see what life is like in certain circumstances. And when you sort of go through that, sometimes you might need to learn lessons during that phase, and when you come back to spirituality, your faith is actually stronger because you've gone through difficult circumstances, you've wrestled with these difficult things, and yet you still have faith despite that, and you have a stronger faith because you've wrestled with these issues. So those are some ways you might kind of make sense of that.
Hare Krishna. May I just add something? Mm-hmm. I think Prabhupada was also asked such a question, and one answer he gave it, how this evil came into existence all day, is because when we turn our back to Krishna, so whatever is in front of us is darkness, because there is Krishna is like a sun, and there is no sun because we turn away. And this darkness is what we create. I don't know if it was clear. This is how I remember. So that's, somehow it's our fault because we turn away from Krishna and we create this darkness.
Yeah, that's
shadow.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's kind of our free will that causes these things. Are there any other questions? Or okay. This goes until 4th?
Now it's time for Q&A.
Okay. Thank you all.
Jaya Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Pancha Tattva, Jaya Pancha Tattva. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Niba Jaya, Jaya Gaura Chande, Arati Kashoba. Jagamanaloga Vakene Nitai Chan Dame Gadadhara Nikate Advaita Shini Rasa Chatradhara Vase Yache Gaurachan Ratna Simhasane Arati Korena Brahma Adi Devagane Nara Hare Adi Kore Kamara Dulaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vaso Goshadigaya Shankar Baje Kanta Baje Baje Karatala Madhuram Riranga Baje Paramarasala Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Baje Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Baje Shanka Baje, Ganta Baje Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Baje Shanka Baje, Ganta Baje Madhur, Madhur, Madhur Baje Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol Bahu Koti Chandra Jini Vadana Ujvala Kala Deshe Vana Mala Kore Chala Mala Shiva Sukha Narada Preme Gadagara Akati Vinodadeke Gaurara Sampada Shiva Jaya Jaya Gaura Chandir Arati Ko Shobha Anadita Vane Jaga Manaloba Jaga Jana Manaloba Jaga Jana Manaloba Gaurangera Roti Shobha Jaga Janamana Loba Gaurangera Roti Shobha Jaga Janamana Loba Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nita Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jam Vishnupad Param Sapravrajagacharya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad Shla Bhai Chanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। नमाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर नवदेवी धाम की जय। गंगामयी यमुनामयी की जय। भक्ति देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर प्रमानंदे हरि बोल। सासलास वराने भक्तम हरे कृष्ण। सासलास वराने भक्तम हरे कृष्ण। सासलास वराने भक्तम हरे कृष्ण। ससला श्री गुरु श्री गौरांग ससला श्री प्रभुपाद। नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रह्लादायिने हिरण्यकशिपुर्वक्षः शीलातंका नकालये इतो नृसिंह परतो नृसिंहो यतो यतो यामिततो नृसिंह बाह्ये नृसिंहो हृदये नृसिंहो नृसिंहामादिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरेणकम् अद्भुतशृङ्गां दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गां केशवधृता नरहरिरूप जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे। सिंहदेव भगवान प्रहलाद महाराज की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि बोल।
Hare Krišna, dragi bakte, še nekaj malega pozornosti, prosim za kratka obvestila. Hare Krišna, kratka obvestila. Najprej bi vas rada povabila na dvodnevno čistilno akcijo, ki bo potekala tukaj v templju in sicer v petek in soboto, 2. februarja in 3. februarja. To čiščenje je namenjeno v okviru priprav na prihajajoče festivale. Vljudno ste vabljeni, veseli bomo vsake vaše pomoči, tako da kdor želi sodelovati, vas prosimo, da se prijavite in vse dodatne informacije boste dobili pri Nataka Čandriki. Čiščenje pa bo potekalo od 10. ure do 5. ure popoldne, vmes pa bo seveda kosilo. Potem pa je še en zanimiv dogodek v soboto, 3.2. na isti dan, kar je čistilna akcija, ob 10. tukaj v Tempeljski dvorani bo pa potekala vas vabi cvetni oddelek na druženje. Tako da dogodek bo v povezavi z aranžiranjem cvetja. Pokazale vam bodo, kako poteka tedenska nabava cvetja, njihovo shranjevanje, razdelitev količina cvetja za posamezne izdelke. Za konec boste dobile darilce v zahvalo in za pripravljenost in seveda tudi kosilo. Vljudno ste vabljene vse. V imenu cvetnega oddelka vas vabijo Achyuta Lila, Mataji, Nataka Čandrika in pa Sashini Shiva. Zdaj ob 6. Zdaj ob 6. zvečer. Aha, ok. Ja, to bo delavnica izdelave cvetja v soboto 3. februarja ob 10. v Tempeljski dvorani. V redu? Boš ti povedala? Ok, še enkrat. V soboto 3. februarja ob 10. tukaj v Tempeljski dvorani bo potekala delavnica izdelav cvetnih vencev in ikeban. Vsi ste lepo vabljeni na ta dogodek in trajal bo do kosila. Ok. Zdaj ob 6. Zdaj ta trenutek, čez 1 uro, pa bo srečanje kongregacije v zgornji učilnici ob 6. Ob 7. pa je program plus z bhajani. Rada bi se zahvalila še vsem bhaktam, ki so danes pomagali pri pripravi prasadama. To je bila danes skupina Mataji, Haribol. Za vse nove goste pa imamo sladko presenečenje, tako da lahko pridete do mene in vam sladko presenečenje izročim in vam morda tudi odgovorim na kakšno vprašanje. Zdaj pa še bomo molili. Sharira vidyajal, Jodendriyata hai kal, Jive pele vishal sagore, Tara madhya jivati, Lobo moj sudurmati, Taki čita katina samsare, Krishna boda doya moj, Kori bare jiva joy, Svaprasada nadilabaj, Senamrita pam, Radha Krishna gunagam, Premedako Chaitanya nitai, Bhagavat prasadam ki. Dobrodošli spet naslednjo nedeljo. Hare Krišna.
Hare